What is something that is expensive, but only owned by poor people? Single items of things that should be bought in bulk. Like single rolls of toilet paper. Barely scraping by paycheck to paycheck means buying bulk is sometimes impossible. I remember I had an old Chevy truck that cost so much to maintain and keep fuel in that I couldn't afford to save for another car. I literally kept me broke until I eventually joined the military and could afford a different vehicle. Crappy cars are more expensive than you realize. Bad credit. It is expensive to make someone comfortable enough to loan you money without them being certain you'll pay it back. Well, at my job there are a few people who I'm aware of their salary. They make around $25,000 a year after taxes. One of them somehow has a lifted Ford Raptor that I hear is like $50,000. He recently acquired a motorcycle too. He probably thinks it's cool, but he's likely eating the dirt off his tires because he can't afford anything else but those payments and insurance. The amount of privates in the Army who have just enough money to pay for their 30% interest 2018 Ford Mustangs, but not enough money to buy literally anything else is pretty ridiculous. Lack of preventative care. Cheap shoes or cheap mattress leads to more expensive medical care. Lack of dental maintenance leads to expensive surgeries. That kind of thing. When you can't afford preventative medical care, it catches up to you, leading to more expensive costs later. Bad teeth. When you can't afford a dentist visit and let your oral health slide, it can have all sorts of expensive health consequences, such as heart disease. MLM equipment. Slabs its hood rich and they spend so much more on straps, candy coats, and clean AF interiors. Looks dope, but I don't care for cars that much to own one, and I'm not from Houston. Just paying rent. Where I live, mortgage is way cheaper than getting a house, but they don't give me a mortgage because I don't earn enough. So I have to keep renting expensive places, making it take even longer for me to save up. And in my situation, getting a better paying job is difficult. I swear this world is made for the rich and middle class. Poor people are straight up ducked in every way possible. Long-term / near constant stress and worry over money. Definitely expensive in terms of physical and mental health. Loads of stuff. It's expensive being poor for a variety of reasons, including having to buy poorer quality goods and needing to replace them more often because of initial cost, not being able to bulk buy, predatory loans, and really anything that puts someone in a you have no other choice position. On top of it, there are things like cheap food being bad for your health and incurring expensive health bills later in life. Continuing paying rent on something you'll never own. Cheap cars that require maintenance more often. Being poor is expensive AF. Court fines and legal fees. Our legal system is based on access, and access costs money. When you don't have that money to access connected legal assistance, you lose in court and get outrageous judgments and fines. Our court system exists to keep poor people poor while making lawyers, judges, legal clerks, etc. some of the most well-paid people in a community. Toxic, unsustainable consumer debt that they will never be able to repay, no matter how many hours they work. Laundry. The poor don't own the machines, but they pay a lot more overall to do laundry at laundromats. Bling. For the most part, yes, celebrities sometimes like to show off a bunch of bling, but the rich people I've known don't aggressively flaunt their wealth. Untreated or unmanaged treatable and manageable diseases. Poor diets. Inadequate access to education. Intergenerational poverty and economic disadvantages. I list all of the above as expensive to own because not only does it cost the people who inherit the listed above financially in the short term, but it often costs them financially in the long term to try to change their situation. Example or food for thought. Is higher education more costly to the adult that has financial and social support with no real threat of failure? Or is it more costly to the adult whose entire future depends on whether or not they can afford next semester's tuition and finally make it out of their neighborhood? Horses. In the UK, only rich people own horses. When I traveled Latin America, all poor people had horses. Children. Outside of the standard one boy, one girl arrangement or an attempt at such, most people who have more than 2 kids tend to be on the lower middle class in my experience. Poverty itself. BC poverty charges interest. Can't pay for a new mattress? You'll have to pay for a chiropractor/back surgery. Can't afford a dentist? You'll have to pay to have a cavity filled. A designer belt. Dudes will pay $300 to hold up their pants but can't afford linens for their mattress that's on the floor without a box spring. Hey, you want to go to the bar tonight and grab dinner? I got paid today. Cool. Have you thought about tomorrow when bills are due and you tell me it's not your fault that you are scrapped for money 13 out of 14 days? Some say that when your TV screen is bigger than your bookcase/bookshelf that you are poor. An example of why being poor is expensive. Let's say you need new running shoes you wear at your job as a cashier. You can't afford the $120 ones that will last and stay comfortable for 2 years. So you pay $30. 3 months later these cheaply made shoes need replacing. So you wind up paying $120 on shoes per year because it's too hard to have $120 all at once to buy ones that will last 2 years. You pay twice as much to achieve the same thing. Guns, tattoos, track phones, past due bills, fat farm and affliction clothes, bad credit, bad teeth, a large exotic tiger collection. Student loans. Been out of school for 5+ years now. Still have 50K looming over my head. And that's considered good for most graduates. Some of my friends have up to $200,000. It's ducking insane. Whereas wealthier kids I graduated with have 0 student debt and are beefing up their savings accounts, going on tropical vacations, buying houses, etc. Yet I know it's my responsibility for my debt. I chose to borrow money to finish my degree. But honestly, it gets disheartening at times. I can't help but to feel jealous at how expensive these high-interest loans can get. I pay more in loans every month than I do in rent. Any high school kids out there reading this, please don't take out a loan, especially private ones. Your school only cares about money and will do everything to push you to take out loans. Poverty itself. It can be mind-bogglingly expensive to be poor. Everything gets put off until it becomes catastrophic. For Dutch people, massive amounts of firework during New Year. Sure, I also spend like 40 on it once a year, but usually the people who really need the money spend hundreds of euros on it each year. Growing up, my family had its moments of struggle. Our public transport system at the time had tickets which were simply hole-punched with a date and month, not the year. So we'd save them and store them neatly in envelopes marked by month and concession or full fare. After a few years of saving tickets, we pretty much had free train and bus travel for the next 10 years. Until they changed the ticketing system to electronically stamped tickets with barcodes. Rims. Why in God's name do you buy nice rims for your POS? Better off sinking that into some r/Wall Street bits. Any type of debt. Money you don't have is unfortunately one of the most expensive products out there. Cell phones. I make a 6-figure salary and have a 4-year-old $75 phone. Not rich but certainly not poor. Help desk people at my job make $20 an hour and all have whatever the latest $1,000 Lemming or Android Meta phone is. I just don't get it. Not exactly owned by poor people, because that's the point. The rich own the property and then dole it out at their discretion. But renting property costs so much money in the long run, and most people are pretty much stuck having to rent because they live paycheck to paycheck. Starbucks and nice shoes. In the Philippines, some folks might earn equivalent of $5 a day. But they'll get their Starbucks and nice shoes to give the impression they aren't as poor as they are. They will take great care of that Starbucks cup, so they can reuse it. iPhones. 2. These status symbols are very important for some. Labor. Poor people do all the work that generates revenue. Then rich people keep the profits, paying the workers a pittance of the revenue they generated. Jordans. Not exclusively owned by poor people, but everyone in my 2-family 1-bedroom apartment neighborhood is obsessed with who owns the most expensive Jordans, as if it's a status symbol. I work at a pawn shop. The most common item pawned by low-income people are the latest, most expensive iPhones and Samsungs. I know that not just poor people have them, but it baffles me how they can buy these with less income. A guy came in to pawn his Samsung Galaxy Fold S10 Plus and Note 9. He talks about his life to us a lot. He's always complaining about being broke. Why does he insist on having these phones but complains about his financial situation? I want to say overcharge fees at banks. It's weird that there's a fee for not having money. Accumulated college loans and expenses, especially by families struggling to finance a higher education for their children. More abstract answer here. But appreciation of the little things. Let me explain. It is crazy to see how happy poor people can be with so little. When I was on vacation to the Maldives, relatively poor, it was astonishing to see how 7 kids would enjoy themselves with a dirty balloon, throwing it around laughing. I really think appreciation and enjoyment with such a minimalistic approach is overlooked as soon as people require wealth. The reason that the rich were so rich, Vims reasoned, was because they managed to spend less money. Take boots, for example. He earned $38 a month plus allowances. A really good pair of leather boots cost $50. But an affordable pair of boots, which were sort of okay for a season or two and then leaked like hell when the cardboard gave out, cost about $10. Those were the kind of boots Vims always bought and wore until the soles were so thin that he could tell where he was in Ankh-Morpork on a foggy night by the feel of the cobbles. But the thing was that good boots lasted for years and years. A man who could afford $50 had a pair of boots that'd still be keeping his feet dry in 10 years' time. While the poor man who could only afford cheap boots would have spent $100 on boots in the same time and would still have wet feet. This was the Captain Samuel Vims Boots theory of socio-economic unfairness. Terry Pratchett. Shoes that cost over $100. My co-workers all make around $1.500 a month but will buy $600 to $900 shoes? Will never make sense to me. People that never have money always have tattoos. They can barely pay rent but always have tattoos. I've never understood it. I'm a broke as a joke, and that's the main reason I don't have any. A/C window units. They are more expensive than central air in the long run, especially when you don't have enough BTUs to cool the room. I've noticed a lot of the poor around the US do a lot of expensive things. At least in my neck of the woods. They smoke, drive gas guzzlers, have many animals, drink excessive alcohol, many do drugs, go to pain management clinics, etc. Obviously a lot of these people I know have lots of debt, rent a home or apartment, make ridiculous payments on the uneco-friendly vehicles they drive, but have the latest cell phones, tennis shoes, or whatever you call them where you're from, designer bags, okay, mostly knockoff, but you're trying to look the part, fake fingernails, dyed hair. I could go on, but I won't.